Welcome once again to the Insights channel. Today we are starting a very special series. It's called Healing the Self. And we also have a very special guest today with us, Moira Lowe. Moira practices Raja Yoga meditation in Brahma Kumaris for more than 40 years. She also teaches meditation, and she coordinates all the work that Brahma Kumaris does in Argentina, as well as a right hand in all the Latin America. So we are going to start speaking about this aspect of healing in terms of being able to discover and accept that you have to be healed. But first of all, welcome to our channel.
Thank you, Patricia. It's my great pleasure to be in this very lovely space of reflection and sharing that you have created. So thank you. And yes, in terms of healing, I really feel that healing is like top of our list these days, because I think there is this genuine interest to progress, to move on, to resolve things. And if we have got stuck in any conflict or situation, there is that deep desire to make ourselves free from that. So I think that this acknowledging that we may have even tried a long time to overcome things, thinking that we can get busier and, move away from things, or sometimes hide from ourselves things that we have that hurt us, and in a way pretend that they're not there, and thinking that, it will get resolved if I get committed or engaged in something else. But I think that this is a time in which we need to stop and look deep within and acknowledge that there are deep wounds in the soul that need my attention and time and need to heal. And I think this is the beginning of allowing myself not to project on people or situations, putting myself in a position of a victim that would allow me to feel bad or hurt or the way I feel for a longer time, thinking it is about something outside of me or someone else. So I think that healing becomes like a safe space in the relationship with myself.
Mm-hmm. But I think that all of us would like to get rid of certain aspects that we realize they take over our thoughts, our mind, our feelings, and but at the same time, it seems to me that we sustain certain internal habits or certain ways of thinking that actually doesn't allow the healing to really happen. So how to allow it to happen? Do you have any experience to share?
Well, from a journey of healing that I did myself, I can tell you that, yes, I agree with you. We have sustained patterns within the self. And I was very lucky to be in a process of healing, guided by someone who was very sweet, very gentle, and very wise. And I was guided into, first of all, looking into my heart and seeing what is in my heart. What am I holding in my heart? In my particular experience, I found a little girl that was hurt. Since I was a child, I was, in a way, holding some trauma from my childhood. And the exercise I went through was identifying a thought pattern, because when we are traumatized, what is generated as a mechanism of survival is a thought pattern that will become a belief but I will, in a way, use it throughout my journey to protect myself. So when I started this journey, I realized that because I was traumatized, I went through a lot of violence when I was a little child. And so I somehow started believing that adults were not trustworthy. And so that would make me defensive. That would somehow allow me to keep a distance or be protected from any other violence that could come towards me. So it became a belief. Adults, men are not trustworthy. And of course, men are trustworthy. But for me, this was a thought pattern. And thought patterns become a filter through which you perceive reality. So then we travel along life thinking that this belief is a reality. And in a way, it doesn't allow the flow of relationship. It doesn't allow trust. And so for me, it was a big discovery. And what I had to do was acknowledge the belief, the pattern. There was a pattern in my mind, and I saw that along my life. And then I had to kind of talk to that thought pattern and say, okay, I have allowed you to be part of my life to protect me. But now I want to free myself from you, the thought pattern, and I want to release you. So when we do this, it's quite interesting because we see that way of thinking is not real and it's not part of me. So it will allow a space for trust. And this is the healing, trust. When we are able to trust myself, trust others, trust the flow of things, trust God, So it was very interesting. And for as long as we don't recognize those thought patterns, we sustain a way of being a victim. And being a victim is just an identity that one creates. We're not really victims of anyone or anything, but I can believe that I am, depending on what I think of a situation that I haven't healed.
Do you think that in this case, discussing about it, speaking with other people, voicing it out, helps in the process?
Yes. It has been my experience that I have had very interesting conversations with very interesting people who are open, very respectful in their listening, very receptive. And so there's like no filters. When you don't feel judged, somehow when we voice what is in our heart, that is a big part of the healing, because it allows me to realize this is something that will now depend on me. I'm now letting go of a grudge, of resentment, of criticism or judgmentalism or being a victim. When we voice it, it's as if we give it up, we surrender it, we offer it. So that makes us, it's very relieving when we do that. When we voice things, we understand it more, we feel heard, we feel respected, and it's a very important step in our healing. So I think that sharing, taking the right help from the right people is a very important aspect of healing.
Mm-hmm. And you have mentioned about God. And it's interesting because God has so many names, and he's known as the supreme healer, he's known as the herbalist, he's also known as the alchemist that does this kind of transformation. How do you personally use God to heal yourself?
I like all the titles that you have shared, but there's one that I particularly like, which is God is my supreme surgeon.
Mm-hmm.
And probably because I am a surgical nurse, and I don't know, but I feel that in what way does God do surgery on the soul? And in nursing practice, I learned something from ordinary surgery, that you need 3 conditions for an operation to take place. The patients should come alone. That means their family and friends should stay out. You need the patient to come naked, and you need the patient to be still. So God does divine surgery, and he does the surgery of love. The real only healing power is the power of love. It is pure love that heals the soul. And so we need to come into this kind of private, safe space where I'm alone, where it's like between him or her and me. And I need to make myself naked of any illusionary identity that I have. So I need to take my awareness to a higher level, where I see myself as a spiritual being, where I see myself as energy. Really, all this is so subtle. It's all happening at the level of energy. And so in this higher awareness, it's as if I could become naked of the mundane, the temporary. And I also need to be still. It means I need to be, on one hand, taking God as the surgeon means speaking to him, means opening my heart, sharing with him what is in my heart. Any pain, any thorn that is in my heart, any resentment, any weakness in my heart. I'm opening my heart and allowing him to heal my heart. So talking to God is one aspect, but then being silent enough to listen to God is when I need that stillness, because nobody sees what a surgeon does. Nobody can see when a surgeon is doing an operation, you cannot see. It is invisible. And the way God heals us is also invisible. And it's allowing his love to touch me. And one thing that I have experienced very powerfully that has allowed me to move out of this victim mode that I was telling you is to come into the light of his vision of me. Because when we feel that we're a victim, we could be comparing with someone, either in superiority or inferiority. All these ideas of who I am are not true, really. So, but it's not so easy to bypass the vision of ego, of my ego, who my ego thinks that I am. So allowing God to heal me has meant, in many occasions, to look into his eyes, how he sees me, and to have the courage to accept what he sees. And what God sees in each one of us as his children is beauty. He sees perfection. He sees completeness. He sees our value, our worth. And it takes a lot of courage to accept, because if we were to make a list of my weaknesses and my qualities, which one would be longer? Probably my weaknesses, because this is the vision we have of ourselves. But then to step into a higher vision of myself takes courage. But God doesn't only show me who I am, but he also awakens in me the power to accept that, the confidence to be that. And his unconditional love allows us to be who we really are, with no expectation. he has high hopes in the children because he loves the children and he knows the children. But he doesn't have expectations. He will never be deceived with us because he has no ego. So his purity is something that sets us free from all illusion and allows him to do in an incognito way. He will do in our hearts. And suddenly, if we are really honest, I think that what connects us with this healing power of his love is our honesty, our true honesty. When we really acknowledge that we need to let go of something, when we take responsibility for my mistakes, when I'm honest, and there is this deep, pure desire to overcome, to resolve, to forgive, or to be forgiven. And this brings us so close. It allows the flow of this love that says it's okay, everything is okay. You are good. You are always good. You make mistakes, and then you have to undergo the consequences of your actions, but you don't need to suffer anymore for things. So I think it's very, very liberating to take refuge in God's vision of me.
Very, very inspiring, to think that the healing process happens through this level of love, which is so unconditional and so kind of pure. And the thing is that there are many layers, in the being. Let's say we know a little bit about the physical layer, but there is also all this emotional and psychological side, and finally there is the spiritual layer. And what I understand is that we are speaking here about the spiritual healing. So would you be able to define to us what would be spiritual healing? Yeah. And just one thing more, and how do you feel that it impacts the other?
Yeah. Well, I think that the healing is a gradual process, and it happens at all the levels, really. Because when we think of, physical healing, needs attention, time, dedication, and it requires honesty again. Sometimes we just eat what we like, but we don't necessarily eat what is good for our body, or we don't exercise enough. And these days, I think that exercising, on one hand, has become a big fad, and everybody's exercising in very good ways, but there's also like there's like a laziness, being laid back, not moving enough. For me, this is a big challenge, exercise. I feel I'm very active in many ways, but I don't exercise that much. So that is something I need to pay attention to a lot. And also then the aspect of rest. When it comes to physical healing, we may not be resting enough, or we may be resting enough hours, but not the quality of sleep that we need. There's a lot to learn in terms of quality sleeping, like the influence that technology has when we have, the phone, the computer, things too close to us when we sleep, and that type of energy, how it affects our sleep and our health. So there's a lot to do and think about and learn. It's very fascinating to learn how to take care of our body, which is the gift of nature. So harmonizing with nature means harmonizing with the body as well. And on this aspect of the emotional healing, it's about relationships and how we connect with each other, and how overcoming negative emotions like anger and jealousy and insecurity and fear takes us really to understanding that it can only have really a spiritual solution, because as long as we're in the domain of ego, we will always be in duality. So I will accept that I'm good and bad. So even if I'm bad, it's not too bad because I'm also good. But when we look at ourselves as spiritual beings, then we're able to recognize our original nature. And for example, peace is our nature. So whenever we are angry, upset, reactive, when we ignore each other, when we stop communicating, this is all part of a acquired, learned behavior.
Mm.
And I think it's very, very liberating to know that anything negative, any negative emotion is not an original, not part of my DNA of the soul. So in Spanish, we have these words, ser y estar, which means to be what I am, but then to be in terms of how I find myself being now.
Mm-hmm.
In English, there's not this distinction, but like I could say I'm a peaceful soul, but at the same time that at the moment I am angry. But it's being angry is temporary, is something that I can transform. And this is the great dimension of spirituality. It gives the space for transformation, coming from that space of dissatisfaction or emptiness into a place of contentment when we recognize our original truth, our peaceful being. We are beings of love. And when we recognize that we've been searching love outside of us for so long, this is why we have hurt ourselves so much. But when we can come back home and acknowledge that we are love itself, that doesn't happen on my own. That has everything to do with meditation, in which that love of God shows me who I am and awakens that love. Because in the ego, we have confused attachment with love. So we have justified being worried about someone because I love you, or being possessive, or even rejecting, you know? So there's so many aspects in which the ego has deprived us from the experience of love. So spiritual healing really brings us back to the deep understanding, and also allowing us to experiment and experience who we really are. And then in my experience, I realized that things that in the past would have hurt me, would have affected me, no longer do. And a very interesting journey has been to, learn to move from reacting to everything to becoming responsive, in terms of learning to give a response rather than a reaction. And it's quite different because I need to be very attentive. I need to be very alert and realize that being upset, for example, is not something that is coming from outside. There may be provocative situations. There may be adverse, difficult things that even seem impossible, that could make me peaceless or very restless or unsafe. But feeling in that way doesn't come from that happening there. It comes from the way I think about that.
Mm-hmm.
So, it always brings us back to the space of consciousness where I become aware of the power, my creating power, my creative power of my own reality. And that is what I choose to think. Suppose someone is very unfair, very cruel, very offensive. They're doing that, maybe beside me. Maybe they want to do that to me. But it's up to me to take it or just observe it. It's easier said than done. But if we train, we become good at it. So then we stop playing the victim of thinking that I feel hurt because you do, or because you say, or because you, whatever, And then we realize we have the power. So it's very interesting. Spiritual healing is a fascinating journey, really.
From what you are saying, let's say there is a situation, and that situation would hurt you, or you would feel hurted, I mean, because of that situation, or you are going to experience some pain because of that situation. And let's say that this situation can even be something physical, let's say a sickness or something like that, no? But then you practices Raja Yoga meditation since many, many years. And we know that one of the aspects of Raja Yoga is the power of transformation that it has. And one of the aspects of this power of transformation is this capacity to just transcend whatever is going on. It might be a person, it might be a sickness, it might be a situation. So you face that, but you have this capacity to transcend. So do you feel that this transcendence would be a key for healing, for example?
Yes, yes. We in the Brahma Kumaris have very, very powerful examples of this. Not with our daddies. We have our seniors, our teachers, who have now left us, quite old. I'm going to talk about Daddy Janki. She left us when she was 104, and that was like 4 years ago. And she was an example of this. Her body was very weak. Her body went through many, many, many situations. Many times we thought, okay, Daddy's leaving us now. she must be leaving us now. But somehow she came back from that transit or whatever the body was going through. And what I noticed is that every time she was like the phoenix. Mm-hmm. And her energy was renewed. And when we asked her, Daddy, what do you do when you're sick? And she said, I go into deep silence. And silence is a healing power, because silence is not empty, it's full of significance. It's full of realization of the power to transform and transcend. It is our original state, by the way. And my experience of, for example, when I went through several fractures in the last 6 years, I think, maybe more, maybe 8 years. I broke my knee. So suddenly I'm so active, but suddenly I couldn't walk. I couldn't walk for 3 months. And I thought, well, what am I going to do with myself? So I think healing is really an attitude. And I felt, okay, when people called me and said, how are you? They wanted to know about my knee. So I said, well, if you want to know about my knee is getting better. But if you want to know about me, I'm beyond this, So at that time, I had to bring my bed into the sitting room because I couldn't do the stairs. So I had a living room and my bed. So I said, okay, what can I do? I created a study group. So I invited friends. So we would sit and do something creative, something to learn. Then I invited students to do different sessions and classes. So I put myself actively beyond my knee. It's like, okay, I have to take care of my knee. Maybe you have to take care of your work or finances or even your family. But can you create something that is beneficial? Because healing is an attitude. If you give, for example, a sickness, an identity, and you talk about it. So every time someone phones, you explain about your pain and what the doctor said. We don't owe explanations to anyone. We need to minimize things and go beyond and take the chance of time, take the chance of good company. I must say, I was very spoiled. I was fed so sweetly, So, but then this was like at a superficial level, if you want, but that also allowed me, it gave me time. And I said, what does Moira do when she has time? Where does her mind go? And the first thing that happened, there was elections in Argentina. And I started watching the news. So my mind became completely polluted. And I said, what am I doing with my precious time? So I said, okay, no more news. So I made the decision that I would not be distracted anymore. So I said, okay, what do I want? And I had long moments of reflective time for myself. Those moments, I was way beyond my leg. I was way beyond the situation. I was somewhere at another level. I was looking at my life in terms of relationships. I was looking at my life in terms of purpose. I was, what could be different? And what I did, and I'm thinking of a particular time when I broke my knee, I became very conscious why that had happened. And I realized that I was not a victim of having fallen over stairs, which that's what happened. I was trimming a fence and I fell off the stairs. But that's the story. That's the scene. But why did I take myself to that scene? And then I realized that I was not being very loyal to myself in terms of how I use time. And so it's like, it's amazing, but we create things that stop you and say, hey, stop. Think about yourself deeply. And these are the moments that God has most access to us, and He can help us. And it's in a way, when we go through the challenges that take us to a situation of healing, it's because we're going to give a big jump. And this is the gift.
Interesting. Very interesting. Anyway, we could speak much more about it, but our time is running, and I'd like to invite you to end this conversation with an experience of meditation, if possible.
Yeah. Okay, so let's take this chance to breathe deeply. And as we exhale, let me feel that my body is relaxing. So let me take a deep breath. And as I exhale, let me let go of any tension or even any discomfort, any negative feeling. Let me feel that I'm letting go. So I'll take all my attention inward to a sacred space behind my eyes. This inner world, this is my universe. This is where I am. Let me become aware that I am this living energy, this beautiful, vibrant light, spiritual energy, the energy of peace, of love, quiet, silent energy of truth. This is my nature, my spiritual nature. Anything else is acquired, doesn't belong to me. I may have carried it as a burden, as an identity for a long time. But now I go back home to the real me, to the one that is eternal. And I'll go back beyond the temporary, the mundane, to silence, to that very deep awareness of being just light, the bodiless being of light, the one that is complete, peaceful. And in this awareness, I am in the presence, the divine light, the supreme, my supreme parent, the source of peace, the one source of unconditional love. And I allow that light go deep into the self, to every corner of my being. And I open my heart and I allow that love that totally accepts me to touch my heart, set me free from my past, to heal the wounds that have hurt me for a long time. This is the love of God, the love of my dreams. Unconditional, no judgment, no questioning. And in His eyes, I can perceive my beauty, my value, who I really am. I am one who is deeply loved by God. I am worthy of pure, true love. And I take a deep breath and I accept who I am. This love sets me free and allows me to be who I am. And with this feeling, I come back. As I breathe deeply, I allow this energy, this living force, go all around my body, bringing life to every cell. And I remain in the awareness of trust, respect for who I am. Om Shanti.
Thank you so much, Moira, for being so open, so truthful, and sharing with us about healing. I think it was a very good start for this new series that we are inaugurating today. And we are going to invite many other people that are going to speak to us from different perspectives of this process of healing. So if you still didn't subscribe to our channel, you can subscribe and you are going to be informed of all the new chapters of this series. And you can also share with other people that can also take benefit from it. And thank you for being with us. Om Shanti.